Whitemore Manor had always been a name that haunted me from a distance, like a whisper just on the edge of my hearing. Over the years, I had encountered numerous spirits, countless hauntings, but this place, deep in the forest, was different. This wasn't just any haunted house. It was a monument to suffering, to guilt, to the sins of a bygone era, and I was about to step into its dark heart. I arrived with my team just as the storm hit, rain pelting the van in a steady rhythm, thunder rumbling like an ominous warning from the heavens above. My breath fogged up the windows as I stared at the towering silhouette of Whitemore Manor. The manor's weathered stone walls loomed like a sleeping giant, with shattered windows peering out like vacant eyes. From the stories I had heard, I knew the building was more than just abandoned. It was cursed. I had been investigating hauntings for nearly a decade, but I had never been this close to something so evil. Every account, every piece of evidence pointed to Whitemore as a place where the veil between the living and the dead was thinner than anywhere else. The locals whispered about the cries of children at night, about the figure of a man walking the halls, always in the same place, always in the shadows. And every tale had one thing in common. The caretaker, Edmund Grieve. They said Edmund was a good man once. But something dark had possessed him, a rage, an uncontrollable hunger. It was said he murdered children, those who had been placed under his care, and buried them somewhere on the grounds, leaving behind nothing but echoes and shadows. I turned to my team, Alex, my closest friend and fellow investigator, and the rest of the crew. We all understood what we were up against. This wasn't just a haunting. It was the product of a deep, unresolved sin. And we had come here to find out if it could ever be put to rest. We got everything we need, I said, my voice steady despite the tension twisting in my gut. Cameras, recorders, EVP detectors. Let's get this over with. The manor's front door creaked as we entered, the hinges protesting like a wounded animal. The air inside was thick with dust and a musty, almost sour scent, as if the building itself was struggling to breathe. We set up our equipment in the foyer, the grand chandelier above us swaying gently as if caught in some unseen draft. As we worked, the silence seemed to press in on us, broken only by the occasional rumble of thunder outside. It was Alex who first broke it, his voice low and cautious. "Elena, do you hear that?" I paused, holding my breath. There was faint at first, but unmistakable. A whisper. It came from deep within the house, echoing down the long corridors. My skin prickled. "It's coming from the east wing," I whispered, my voice barely audible. "We should check it out," Alex suggested, but his tone was uncertain. He was brave, but even he could feel the oppressive weight of the house. We gathered our things and moved down the hall, the sound of our footsteps muffled by the thick carpet. The whispers grew louder with every step, until they weren't whispers at all, but indistinct murmurs, words that we couldn't quite make out. We reached a small door at the end of the hall, hidden in a shadowed alcove. The air here was colder, and the whispers seemed to pulse from behind it. I tried the door handle. It was locked. "Should we force it open?" one of the crew members asked. "No," I said, stepping back. "There's something here, something we're not meant to see yet." But my curiosity, my obsession with uncovering the truth, wouldn't let me leave it alone. We searched a nearby area and found a hidden key under the floorboards. It was tarnished, ancient, but it fit perfectly into the lock. The door creaked open, revealing a narrow staircase descending into a cellar. The air here was thick, stagnant, as though it hadn't been disturbed in decades. "Let's move," I said, and we descended into the darkness. The cellar was cold. Too cold. The walls were lined with cobwebs, and in the far corner, we found a large, dust-covered trunk. I could feel the hairs on the back of my neck standing up. There was something about that trunk, something wrong about it. "This is it," I muttered. "This is what we've been looking for." We pried open the trunk with a crowbar, and as it cracked, a cold gust of air rushed out, chilling me to the bone. Inside the trunk, we found an old leather-bound book, its pages yellowed with age. But it wasn't the book that caught my attention. It was a symbol carved into the inside of the trunk, a symbol I recognized. "It's a summoning sigil," Alex said, his voice a mix of fear and awe. Before I could respond, a voice echoed from the darkness, a deep, guttural whisper. Too low to understand, but unmistakable in its menace. "Get out!" The air grew heavier, thick with malice, and the temperature dropped even further. I felt a sudden pressure on my chest, as if the very walls were closing in on me. The trunk slammed shut, and the door to the cellar locked behind us. We were trapped. Suddenly, the whispers began to form coherent words. They came from the corners of the room, from the shadows, voices that seemed to come from every direction, whispering the same thing. "Edmund, Edmund, Edmund." A figure emerged from the darkness, a man, tall and gaunt, his face pale and twisted in agony. His eyes were empty, hollow, filled with a darkness that seemed to swallow everything around him. It was Edmund Grieve. His form was distorted, as though he was only half there, his presence more shadow than flesh. "Who are you?" I demanded, my voice trembling. "What do you want?" He tilted his head, and I saw the faintest flash of recognition in his eyes. "I am the caretaker," he rasped. "I did what was necessary. The children, they were mine to take. All of them. And now you are mine." The shadows in the cellar began to move, swirling around us. And then the visions came. I saw Edmund, his hands bloodied, his face contorted in madness, as he killed child after child, dragging their lifeless bodies into the ground, burying them beneath the earth. The faces of the children twisted in agony as they reached out to me, their hands clawing at the air, their eyes pleading for help. It was too much. I stumbled back, unable to breathe. The past, the horrors Edmund had inflicted, was crashing down on me, suffocating me. But amidst the chaos, I spotted something. The old diary, the book we had found in the trunk. I grabbed it, flipping through its pages until I found what I was looking for. A ritual, a spell to break the curse. With trembling hands, I set fire to pages. The flames consumed the diary, and with it, the darkness in the room began to recede. Edmund let out a shriek of fury, his form collapsing into the shadows, disappearing into the walls of the manor. We were free, or so I thought. As the last of the smoke faded, I turned to check on Alex. He was gone, vanished. "Alex!" I called, my voice cracking, but there was no response. Only the whispers in the shadows. I was left alone in the cold, dark cellar, and I couldn't shake the feeling that we hadn't banished the evil at all. We had only delayed it. And now, it was waiting for someone else. And that someone might just be me. The night air was cold, biting, and carried a damp chill as we pulled up to the Greystone Asylum. The headlights of our van cut through the inky darkness, illuminating the towering, decaying structure ahead. Once a place of healing, it had become a monument to suffering, and now, after decades of abandonment, it stood silent, yet alive with stories begging to be told. Theo and I had been called here after a series of disturbing reports. Strange sounds echoed from within, ghostly apparitions were spotted by locals, and several residents claimed to hear the cries of the lost souls that once roamed these halls. The asylum, closed in the 1970s, had an infamous history. A patient revolt had ended in a fire that claimed dozens of lives, and since then, the place had become a grim legend. No one dared go near, except for those like us, the paranormal investigators, constantly searching for the truth behind these chilling whispers of the past. I adjusted the strap of my camera bag, my heart racing with a mix of excitement and unease. "Ready for this?" I asked Theo, my voice barely above a whisper. Theo gave me a quick nod, his usual calm demeanor masking the tension in his eyes. "Always." We stepped out into the cold, the gravel crunching beneath our boots as we made our way toward the entrance. The asylum loomed over us, its broken windows like empty eyes staring into our souls. I could almost feel the weight of its tragic history pressing down on me. Every step forward seemed to stir something in the air, a heaviness that didn't belong. The echoes of the past whispered on the wind. Inside, the silence was deafening. The walls, once white and bright, were now yellow with age, and peeling paint covered every surface. The smell of mildew and rot filled the air, and the further we ventured into the asylum, the more oppressive the atmosphere became. It was as if the walls themselves held secrets that only the brave or foolish would dare to uncover. We set up our equipment in the main lobby. The old reception desk long abandoned. Its wood warped and cracked. The air felt unnaturally still. No creaking floors, no sound of wind. Just a heavy, suffocating silence. The feeling that we were being watched grew stronger by the second. It was then that we first saw him. An older man, dressed in a faded, old-fashioned orderly's uniform, appeared from the shadows. His face was weathered, his eyes sunken, but his movements were surprisingly swift. He approached us slowly, his shoes making little sound on the worn floorboards. There was something strange about him, something off. He smiled, but the expression never quite reached his eyes. "You must be the investigators," the man said, his voice a gravelly whisper, as if he hadn't spoken in years. "I'm here to guide you." A chill ran down my spine. I exchanged a quick look with Theo, but he was already raising an eyebrow. "Guide us?" I asked, my voice betraying the unease that was starting to creep in. "Yes," the man said, nodding eagerly. "Through the halls, of course. I know this place like the back of my hand, and I can show you the hidden ward." He leaned in closer, as if revealing some great secret. The hidden ward. That was a red flag for me. I glanced at Theo, but his face remained unreadable. There was something about this man that didn't sit right with either of us. "We can handle it ourselves," Theo said, his tone firm. But the man didn't seem to take no for an answer. His hand shot out, grabbing Theo's arm. His grip was cold, almost unnatural. No, you don't understand. You must see it. The hidden ward is where everything began. It's where the suffering started," he whispered urgently, his eyes gleaming with something I couldn't quite place. I pulled Theo back slightly, my mind racing. "Thank you, but we'll pass on the tour," I said, trying to sound as polite as possible, but there was no mistaking the growing unease in my voice. The man's face fell, and for a moment, he simply stood there, staring at us, before giving a strange, jerky bow. "Suit yourselves. But you'll never leave without seeing the truth," he muttered, his voice barely audible as he backed into the shadows and disappeared as quickly as he had come. The room felt colder now. The air seemed to thicken, pressing in on us from all sides. We stood there for a long moment, both of us too shaken to speak. "Did that just happen?" Theo finally asked. I nodded slowly. "I don't know, but something isn't right here. That man wasn't just some lost soul. He knew too much, almost as if he's been waiting for us." We decided to move on, but something in the back of my mind told me that the asylum wasn't done with us yet. As we ventured deeper into the asylum, strange things began to happen. Faint shadows darted out of the corners of my vision, disappearing when I turned to look. The air grew colder, and with each step we took, the whispers grew louder, curling through the walls like an unholy chant. "Leave! Leave this place." The whispers sounded like the voices of the past, distorted and tainted by years of pain and regret. I shook my head, trying to focus, but the unease only deepened. Theo's camera clicked quietly in the background as we moved through the darkened hallways, the beam of his flashlight cutting through the gloom. It wasn't until we reached the basement that things took a darker turn. The basement was even colder than the rest of the asylum. The air had a sharp, metallic taste, and the stench of decay grew overwhelming. The floor was slick with moisture, and the walls were lined with old, rusted pipes. But what caught our attention were the unmarked graves. Rows and rows of them, lined up along the walls, each one a silent testament to the lost souls who met untimely ends within these walls. We moved closer, our footsteps muffled by the thick layer of dust on the floor. Theo's camera flickered, the battery running low. That's when I felt it. A cold hand gripped my arm, pulling me toward the graves. My breath caught in my throat as I whirled around, but there was no one there. "Ava?" Theo's voice trembled as he caught my arm. What the hell was that? Before I could answer, his camera caught something on the screen. A distorted face, twisted, contorted in agony, screamed silently at us. "Get out!" it mouthed. The air around us thickened. The shadows seemed to come alive, stretching toward us with unnatural speed. We turned to run, but it was too late. Theo's camera caught the last thing I wanted to see, The face of the older man, his eyes now black voids, his form warping into something inhuman, feeding off the torment of the souls who had perished in this place. We fled, our hearts pounding, the sound of our footsteps echoing in the dead silence of the asylum. We didn't stop until we were back outside, gasping for air in the cold night. The camera footage still played in my mind, the warped face of that thing seared into my memory. As we sat in the van, trying to process everything that had happened, I noticed something strange on Theo's car. Symbols scratched into the metal. Strange, twisted markings that I couldn't begin to understand. It was as if someone had followed us. Theo looked at me, his face pale. "It's not over," he whispered, his voice shaking. "It followed us." And as the engine roared to life, I couldn't shake the feeling that the asylum's echoes weren't done with us yet.